Story 1. I was 15 or 16 at a house party with my good friend, another girl. There were some uninvited guests who turned up, which wasn't unusual at London house parties, but these guys were older, and there was just a vibe. A girl I vaguely knew was very drunk and surrounded by them, and I asked her if she was okay, and she told me to leave her alone. I'm fine. I looked at my friend and said to her, I'm going to call my mom and dad to come get me. Do you want a ride? My parents were always amazing and said to me that if I was at a party or out and for any reason didn't want to be where I was, I could call them and they would come and get me. My parents turned up, coats on over pajamas, and took us both home. Apparently, half an hour after we left, someone was stabbed, the girl we had asked earlier was sexually assaulted, and lots of stuff was stolen, and people were beaten up and held up at knife point. I had such a feeling in the air that I've hardly felt before or since, and knew we needed to not be there. Story 2. I posted this in a similar thread a couple of months ago, but I'll share it here. I used to drive for Lyft. In April 2018, I picked up a young couple from a bar at about 1:30 a.m. They were fairly relaxed, and I figured it would be my last ride of the night. The man asked me to stop at a corner store on the way to their destination so he could get cigarettes. I didn't see any harm in waiting, so I stopped and had a nice chat with the young woman while he was in the store. He ended up being about 5 minutes since everyone was trying to get their pre-2 a.m. beer. When he came out, he asked me to take him to a location that was in the opposite direction of their destination, but was only about a mile away. He said he wanted to meet some friends quickly and grab some beer. Since I figured it would be my last ride of the night, I thought, why not? And drove him over there. Now, I know the town we live in fairly well, but the direction we were coming from was not a way I was used to going when visiting this location. So when I turned onto the destination street, I missed the turn into the complex parking lot. I just came to a complete stop since the roads were empty and asked them if they wanted me to park on the street or pull into the complex. This is when the two of them started arguing, as he suddenly wanted to go in and hang out for a few minutes while she didn't want to go in at all. She just wanted him to do his thing and get out of there so they could go home. And then something hit my car. The sound is unmistakable to me, so I immediately started to look around to figure out what it was. But there were no other cars on the road, so that couldn't have been it. Then I moved to the next thing on my mental checklist. If something didn't hit me, then what did I hit? But that didn't make any sense either, as I'd been in park and couldn't have hit anything. It's at this point that the young woman's attitude completely changed. She just kind of looked around and then said, "Can we just get out of here? It hurts and I want to go home." This was odd to me, as she'd been sitting in my car for about 10 minutes at this point and hadn't said a word about any kind of pain. She followed this up with, "It hurts and I can't move," put her hand to her back, and pulled it out covered in blood. What the hell? So the guy starts freaking out, thinking that something in my trunk had exploded, but it was empty. As he reached over to tend to her, I noticed something white sticking out of the seat. This hadn't been there at the beginning of the night, so I asked him what it was. He pulled on it. It was a piece of the filler fuzz from my seat. It came out of the hole that had been made in the seat, because she'd been shot. As soon as he grabbed that fuzz, we both had the same realization. He slammed shut his door and I drove them straight to the hospital, which was only a couple of miles away. That realization and the follow-up realization of, oh, someone could still shoot you while you're sitting here, was one of the most terrifying things I'd ever experienced. Story 3. When I was 15, a friend and I went for a lot of walks around town. It was a small town with around 5,000 to 6,000 people. We were going to the cyber cafe in town to meet a few friends, and we often took different streets to get places just to keep it interesting. We were about to go to Main Street off one of the side streets when a man on a bicycle approached us. He got off his bike and asked us a couple of small talk questions. Something didn't seem right about him. He was probably in his mid-40s. We both kept inching away but didn't want to come off as too rude, so we answered about the weather or traffic. Then he paused and we said we had to go, and he said, and I'll never forget it, "You look so young. I don't want to get in trouble, but I need to touch someone. I just need to touch you. You should come with me." And he started rambling. I just felt terror, couldn't even speak. I grabbed my friend's hand and turned. We sprinted the rest of the way to the cafe. And as soon as we were inside, we asked to use the phone. I called my mom to pick us up while my friend told the worker what happened and what the guy looked like. A month later, I got my first cell phone. Story 4. About 2 months ago, I stayed up past my usual bedtime. As soon as I got in bed, I smelled something odd and heard some inconsistent banging and clattering from downstairs. I don't live in a great neighborhood, so none of this was unusual, but I got out of bed to check anyway and saw flames licking up the side of the building. I yelled at my wife to get out of bed, threw on some clothes, and we quickly made our way out. Our building has a shared wall with the next one, which had an apartment on the ground floor fully engulfed by the time we made it outside, ultimately leading to condemning the whole building. I was the first one to call 911. I have been jerking myself awake in the night pretty consistently since then. Story 5. I was waiting for an Uber on the outskirts of Atlanta with a couple of friends around 10 p.m. We were just chatting after leaving a nearby restaurant and talking about what bar to go to. A disheveled older man walked up a few feet behind one of my friends and struck a weird pose for 2 to 3 minutes while looking in our direction, and there was no one else around. Then he walked off without saying a word. He came back a few minutes later and sat down on the sidewalk about 5 feet away from us. At this point, I was just wondering if he wanted something from us because there was absolutely no other reason to sit down that close to us on an empty sidewalk. Then a small sedan pulled into a nearby parking lot, parking behind some bushes in the spot closest to us and consequently furthest from any of the shops in that lot. I only noticed because I happened to be facing that direction, but then saw 6 guys pile out of the sedan and immediately cross the street directly towards us. I realized there were no shops or restaurants still open nearby. It suddenly occurred to me that the strange dude might have been sizing us up when he was watching us earlier, and he came back to mark us. We were all dressed nicely with smartphones out and watches visible. Basically the fanciest stuff we had for a night out. Right as I started to speak up that we should head back towards other people, our Uber pulled up to the curb. As we drove away, I watched those 6 guys talking in a circle where we had just been standing, and then they crossed the street again and got back in their car. I'll never have a definitive answer, but I'm pretty sure we were 10 seconds away from some unfortunate shenanigans. Story 6. A couple of friends and I were outside a house party talking. I noticed out of the corner of my eye something dark behind some bushes towards the end of the block, maybe 4 houses down. It was dark out, so it was hard to tell. We stood there a bit longer, and I swore I saw something move to a tree a little closer. This wasn't the best neighborhood. My whole hometown isn't the safest. And I knew a couple of people at the party were involved in some stuff, so I don't know if that entered my mind or what, but I got immediate goosebumps. I said, "Let's go now." A couple of my friends looked at me weird, but later one told me they knew by the look on my face something was up. I apparently looked possessed. I had my keys, so we ran to my car and got in. I didn't even let anyone get their seatbelts on. I just hit the gas. Based on the news stories, less than probably 5 minutes later, a group of people shot up the house we were at. The others standing outside were severely injured or killed. It turns out a couple of guys at the party were thought to have killed someone's family member, and it was a revenge thing. This was over 20 years ago, and I still get nervous if I'm standing around outside, especially if it's dark. Story 7. Grocery shopping with my grandma. She's tired, normal for her, but she's getting a bit slower and dragging her leg more than usual. At the checkout counter, I saw her face was a little droopy, and I said we are leaving now and going to the emergency room. They gave her a bottle of water for the car ride, which she ended up choking on and vomiting up all the water. Called ahead to the emergency room so they were ready, and they took care of her as soon as possible. She was having a stroke, and they were able to help her quickly enough so that she didn't have any long-lasting issues. Story 8. New Year's Eve in Moscow. I, a dark-haired brown man, was drinking with my significant other, a blonde white woman, in a bar getting friendly with some locals who tried their best to speak English. They were so friendly that one of them gave us a matryoshka doll that he was going to give to his mother later that night. They seemed a little too friendly, and maybe they just were, but at one point I went to order more drinks and the bartender, who had been watching and serving us, gave me a stern look and said, "You should leave now." I found this a little strange and unexpected, so naturally, I tried to question what he meant, but his face was drop-dead serious. He looked at the friendly group, then at my girlfriend, then to me and repeated his words. I didn't really want to take any chances in Russia and wanted to see another bar anyway. So I grabbed my girl, the doll, and promptly left. Story 9. I was in college when I had my first solo apartment. This guy across the hall would come over or invite me over and we'd hang out a few times. However, I would not call him a friend. One night, he asks me to loan him some money. In addition to not wanting to loan him money, I do not really have any, so he proceeds to ask for a ride to see his girlfriend because she has some money for him. I agree. We arrive at her apartment and a small party is going on. When we walked into the party, everyone immediately shuts up and stares at us. He runs off to find his girlfriend, who I find out is his ex-girlfriend. It is awkward because I am kind of this guy's friend by association, and I am getting lots of angry stares. He gets into an argument with her and we are basically thrown out of this place. He then asks if I can take him to another part of town. He owes another guy some money and needs to go talk to him. We proceed to an unfamiliar part of town, and he instructs me to park in a fairly isolated spot. He explains that he does not want the other guy to see my car because he might take it. He owes this guy money for gambling or drugs or something else bad, and he is way behind on his payments. I left him and spent the rest of my time in that apartment avoiding him. Story 10. Was in Mexico City with family, including 2 daughters. Grabbed a cab on the street around 10 p.m. to take us back to the hotel. I was somewhat familiar with the area since we had been there 4 or 5 days already. The cab driver totally passed the hotel district and started heading away from the part of town we were in. The streets were getting more and more residential. I demanded that he pull over, and we got out and walked back to the hotel, probably 3 or 4 miles. He was probably just padding the fare, but I was not going to take a chance on being kidnapped, so we left. Story 11. Sknyliv Airshow Catastrophe. I was around 5 years old at the time, so it's more my dad's story than mine. You can search for the details, but to keep it brief, my dad saw the plane jolt in the air. He realized something was wrong and started running, yelling at everyone else to run too. I was sitting on his shoulders, so he just took off with me. The plane crashed into the crowd, killing 77 people, including about 35 children. Not us. Story 12. I work as an engineer in a data center cooling plant. We're responsible for basically everything in the building: mechanical, electrical, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and plumbing. The engineer I'm relieving tells me there's an odd sound coming from the Consolidated Edison vaults. This is where these huge transformers step down from 26,000 volts or so to a voltage the building can actually use. We are not allowed in those vaults. They're locked, and only Consolidated Edison has the key. He leaves, and I take a walk by the vaults. I had never actually heard electricity arcing through the air before, but I knew I was hearing it then. I called Consolidated Edison's emergency line and told them to get out there as soon as possible. A crew of 2 guys showed up. They seemed calm and disinterested in the elevator on the way up. "It's probably just a contact chattering," they said. We get off the elevator and start heading down the hall. The sound was much louder now. We weren't even near the vaults, and there was no mistaking it. Both guys stopped dead in their tracks and kind of hunkered down. I saw the color drain from them. They wasted no time getting back in that elevator. If you've never seen a video of a large transformer explosion, go check online. These transformers are not like the ones you see up on utility poles. They're as big as a couple of trucks stacked on top of each other. Anyone on the floor when one of them exploded would be gone, and we have 8 of them. Story 13. There's a few for me, but a significant one. I was 10 years old, and my aunt had a small 100-acre farm that was also used as a livery yard for horses. I had a pony called Toffee. We often had kids come into our fields from the neighboring park. They would antagonize the livestock and horses, set dogs on the sheep, set fire to hay, and just generally cause stress and damage. We were told to stay away, ignore them, and tell an adult if we saw them. The police often did nothing, as the kids would escape onto the park, and the council refused to let us close off the public footpaths through the fields. It was a true misery. I went to catch my pony from the field and saw he was sweaty and wide-eyed. I don't think he understood for a moment that he was safe with me from this frightened look he gave me. I realized suddenly there were 6 people in the copse of our field. I was suddenly frightened and tried to encourage Toffee to come with me quickly. Initially, the boys ran. I believe when they saw how small I was and that I was no threat, the group made their way back towards me. The field was 5 acres, and this all occurred in one of the corners. 3 of them dropped their trousers and flashed at me. Keep in mind, I was a 10-year-old little girl who did not understand but had an idea of what was implied. In a panic, I went to grab my pony, but he was scared of them and backed away. One of the boys shouted, "If you touch that horse, I'm going to rape you." Toffee, in that moment, charged briefly toward them. I don't know if it was fight, not flight, kicking in, or he sensed my terror, but it was enough to scatter the boys. I started to turn and bolt as fast as my legs could carry me toward the gate. One of the boys chased after me. I obviously screamed for my life and felt his hand briefly run over my hair before he fell over. I sprang the gate and ran down the drive to the barn where my aunt and mom were. I always wonder if I had not run in that moment or if Toffee had not charged at them if I'd be alive. The field was far away from safety. My parents would leave me for hours alone at the farm. There was a forest and stream as well, so my small body could easily have been hidden. If any are curious, I still have Toffee about 13 years later. He's 27 and a very old grumpy pony. I'll keep him till he departs the world. He has given so much joy for the little he gave, and he might have saved me had he not taken off when he did. Answering some questions, this account was on my tablet. I hardly post or comment online, I just look. I did not expect to get any attention on this, but I do understand why people find it fake or suspicious. 100 acres is small for a farm. Do you really think a herd of cows, sheep, hens, horses, etc. would not take up a lot of space? Think about how much is used for barns, stables, the old house, etc. Consider how much is used to feed the human population. I think that farm barely sustained a few butchers in our area. Most English small farms are over 100 acres and go up to thousands. The kids were most likely chasing or throwing things at the horses. I don't know why they do this.